Hey everyone, welcome back to Trending Tidbits. We always love to get our hands on your suggestions, and this time we're diving into something really interesting, the whole mind-body connection.
Yeah, it's a big one. And you guys sent over some awesome sources on the philosophy of mind that we're going to be digging into.
It's kind of wild how we just assume our minds and bodies are separate things. Like there's this clear dividing line,
Right. And, that's a question that's been around for ages.
but is it really that simple?
Well, that's what we're here to find out. As we go through these sources, I think we're going to see some pretty cool challenges to those traditional ideas.
For sure.
Yeah.
We've got Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, always a classic.
Right. And phase beyond the brain. That one's super thought-provoking.
And we even have some research on mirror neurons, which is always fascinating.
Oh, and a little bit of Confucian wisdom from the Analects thrown in for good measure.
I love how this all comes together. It makes you question, like, how we experience the world and connect with other people.
Exactly. Let's kick things off with Descartes. He kind of set the stage for this whole debate with his idea of dualism.
Oh, yeah, he was all about separating mind and body.
Right. He said you could doubt your body exists, maybe you're dreaming or something, but you can't doubt your mind exists that you're thinking.
It's that whole I think, therefore I am thing.
Exactly.
It does seem kind of intuitive, though, right? Like, we feel like our minds are separate from our bodies. Like, there's a voice in our head that's not connected to our physical self.
For sure, it's a common feeling.
But then we've got Faye coming in with Beyond the Brain. And he's like, hold on a sec, that separation might be an illusion.
Yeah, he argues that the mind isn't just stuck in our heads, it actually emerges from how we interact with the world, like our
Right.
physical environment, social stuff, even cultural norms.
So instead of this isolated mind, it's like our mind is woven into our experiences.
Exactly.
That's cool.
To show what he means, Faye uses the duck-rabbit illusion as an example.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one. It's like the same lines on paper, but you can see a duck or a rabbit, depending on how you look at it.
Right. And that's his point. It's not just our eyes passively taking in info. Our minds are actually shaping what we see.
So it's like using our past experiences and expectations to make sense of things.
Yeah, our brains are filling in the gaps all the time.
So our bodies aren't just like cameras. They're part of how we experience the world.
Precisely. And Faye takes it a step further. He says our bodies are like social canvases.
Oh, wow, what does that mean?
Well, he's saying they're shaped by the norms and expectations of the cultures we live in.
That's really interesting, especially when you think about something like body image.
Exactly. It's not just about how we see ourselves, it's also about societal standards of beauty and what's considered desirable.
It's crazy how much pressure there is to fit into those molds.
Yeah, Faye actually references Goffman's work on social performance.
So it's like we're always presenting a certain image, trying to fit in.
And that pressure, it can really mess with our mental and physical well-being.
For sure. Think about all the anxiety around appearance, the pressure to conform to certain body types.
It shows how deep those social norms go, right? Like they get into our heads and affect how we feel about ourselves.
Absolutely. And it's not just superficial either. It can lead to real problems like stress eating disorders, all sorts of things.
Definitely, Faye even touches on how cultural narratives shape how we think about disease.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he mentions Sontag's work about how illnesses like cancer or AIDS get wrapped up in moral judgments and metaphors of invasion or pollution.
Wow. It's mind-blowing how these narratives can influence not just our perceptions, but our biology too.
It really is fascinating. But before we get too deep into the social stuff, I think we need to talk about another piece of the puzzle,
What's that?
how we understand the minds of others.
Ooh, that's a good one. Like, if we're struggling to define our own minds, how can we even begin to grasp what's happening inside someone else's head?
It's a classic problem in philosophy, the problem of other minds.
And it's something we all deal with every day, right? Like trying to figure out what someone else is thinking or feeling.
Yeah, all the time. And luckily, some of the research you sent over about mirror neurons might offer some clues.
Oh, cool. I'm excited to hear about that.
It's really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is a puzzle, isn't it? Like, we can look at someone's face, their body language, but how do we really know what's going on in their mind?
Right. We're just guessing based on like our own experiences and stuff.
And those guesses can be so off. Sometimes what seems obvious to one person could mean something totally different to someone else.
So how do mirror neurons fit into all of this?
Well, they were first discovered by Giacomo Rizzolatti and his team, and these neurons actually fire both when we do something and when we watch someone else doing the same thing.
Whoa, so it's like our brains are mirroring the actions of others.
That's the idea.
That's wild. It's almost like we're experiencing it ourselves.
Exactly. And it's not just physical actions either. Studies have shown that mirror neurons also fire when we see someone feeling an emotion, so they might be involved in empathy too.
So like if I see someone smiling, my mirror neurons fire as if I'm smiling too.
That's the theory. It could be part of how we understand and share each other's feelings.
That's incredible. Like there's a biological reason why we connect with others on an emotional level.
It's pretty amazing, right? It suggests that our connection with other people goes even deeper than we thought.
But I guess it can't be that simple, right?
Well, Fay definitely cautions against oversimplifying things. He says mirror neurons are cool and all, but they don't tell the whole story. Our own experiences, our values, our culture, all of that shapes how we interpret those mirror neuron signals.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Two people could see the same thing happening, but their own personal histories will affect how they understand it.
For sure. And it all circles back to that idea of the social canvas we were talking about before. Not only are our bodies shaped by social norms, but our minds are too.
So even how we understand other people is influenced by society.
It's like we're all playing this complicated game of social interpretation, trying to read between the lines.
It makes you wonder if we can ever really understand each other or if we're all just stuck in our own little worlds.
That's a great question. And it actually brings us back to something we touched on earlier, free will.
Wait, how are those two things connected? I thought free will was about, like, individual choice, not about understanding other people.
True, but think about it this way. If our minds are shaped so much by our environment, our social interactions, even those mirror neuron responses, then where does our own individual agency come in?
I see what you mean. Like, how much control do we really have over our own thoughts and feelings if all these external factors are influencing us?
Exactly. It's a pretty deep question.
Are we actually making our own choices, or are we just products of our environment and biology?
Well, it's interesting to compare Descartes' dualism with Fay's idea of the embodied mind. Descartes thought the mind was separate from the body and had total freedom to choose, but Fay's perspective suggests it's more complicated than that.
So it's not just about pure logic and making decisions in a vacuum.
Right. Our choices are affected by tons of things, both inside and outside of us.
And then there's the Confucian perspective, which adds another layer to all of this. They really emphasize empathy and social harmony.
Right. It's not just about understanding other people to, predict their behavior or get something from them. It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that we share a common humanity.
So it's more about actively engaging with other people, trying to see the world through their eyes, not just observing them from a distance.
Exactly. And that takes a lot of humility, a willingness to step outside of ourselves and admit that we don't have all the answers.
It's like that saying from the Analects, do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you.
Yeah, it's not just a moral rule. It's about realizing that we're all in this together.
This is heavy stuff.
Uh-huh.
We've gone from mind-body separation to embodied minds to social canvases, and now we're talking about the ethics of understanding other people.
Yeah.
This episode is a real whirlwind.
It is, but it all comes back to that initial question about the mind-body connection. It might seem abstract at first, but as we're seeing, it really affects how we see ourselves or relationships, everything, really.
Yeah, it's amazing how it all connects, Like mind and body, social stuff, mirror neurons, even free will.
It all comes back to how complex we are as humans, right? Like, we're not just brains in jars making decisions based on pure logic.
Right, we're influenced by so many things.
Our bodies, our experiences, the people around us, the culture we live in.
It's so easy to fall into those simplistic explanations,
Like, it's just chemicals or people are just selfish.
But when we see how everything interacts, it paints a much bigger picture.
And I think it helps us be more understanding of ourselves and other people, too.
Definitely. Instead of blaming each other, we can start to ask, what happened to lead to this?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that can make a huge difference.
Not just in our personal relationships, but in how we deal with social issues, too.
Like poverty, addiction, even criminal justice.
It's about seeing behavior as coming from a whole web of influences.
And that opens up new possibilities for how we help people.
It's a much more compassionate approach.
And it brings us back to what Faye was saying about understanding the mind's value dimension.
All right, it's not just about how our brains work, but also about what matters to us.
What gives our lives meaning and purpose.
And those values aren't just something we come up with on our own right.
They're shaped by our families, our communities, the whole culture we're surrounded by.
It makes you wonder how much choice we really have in shaping our own values.
Are we just absorbing what's around us? Or can we step back and decide for ourselves what we believe in?
That ties back into the free will debate, doesn't it?
Totally. Like, if we're being influenced by all these things, how much freedom do we really have to choose who we are and what we value?
It's a tough question.
There aren't any easy answers, but I think recognizing those influences is a good first step.
So, like, becoming aware of the things that are shaping our thoughts and actions.
Exactly. If we can see those social scripts and cultural biases, we can start to question them and make more conscious choices.
It's like being aware of the puppet strings so we can at least choose which ones to dance to.
That's a great way to put it.
But how do we even become aware of those strings in the first place?
It's easy to just go with the flow. That's where things like mindfulness can help.
Oh, yeah, paying attention to our thoughts and feelings and what's
Mhm.
happening in our bodies.
Exactly. It helps us notice those subtle influences that might be shaping us without us even realizing it.
We can start to see the stories we're telling ourselves, the assumptions we're making about others.
And the emotional patterns that are driving our reactions.
It's like creating a pause button.
Yes. A space between stimulus and response.
So instead of just reacting automatically, we have a chance to choose a different path.
And in that pause, that's where our agency comes in.
We can ask ourselves, is this really what I believe?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just doing this because everyone else is doing it?
It's a constant process of self-discovery.
Always questioning our assumptions, trying to understand ourselves better.
And it's a journey that's made richer by looking at things from different perspectives.
Like all the different ideas we've explored in this episode.
From Descartes' mind-body separation to Fay's embodied mind.
From mirror neurons to Confucianism.
Each perspective gives us a different way to understand this complex relationship between mind and body, self, and other.
It's through that exploration, being open to different ideas, that we can start to build a better understanding of ourselves and the world.
So to our listener out there, keep exploring, dive deeper into the sources that spoke to you, and talk about these ideas with other people.
Yeah, the mind-body connection isn't just some abstract concept. It's something that affects all of us every day.
It shapes how we live, how we love, how we make sense of everything.
That's a great way to put it. Well, that's a wrap for this episode of Trending Tidbits.
A big thank you to our listener for these awesome sources.
We had a blast digging into this topic with you.
And we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind-body connection.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing.